When the strongest alien in the academy chose to humiliate a human girl, he had no idea he was challenging someone who had already survived war. Look, I am not saying I saw it coming, because honestly, none of us did. But when Krexar decided that Thursday afternoon was the perfect time to humiliate the new human girl, well, let us just say the universe has a sense of humor darker than a collapsed star. My name is Thornick, and I am what you would call an average student at the Galactic Combat Academy. Average height for a Keltorian, average grades, average everything really, which means I am smart enough to keep my head down and my mandibles shut when trouble starts brewing. And trouble? Oh, trouble was definitely brewing in Training Hall 7 that day. The hall itself is massive, because of course it is. Vaulted ceilings that could fit 3 cruiser-class ships stacked on top of each other, reinforced floors that have seen more blood than a military hospital, and enough weapons lining the walls to start a small war. Or end one. The air always smells like ozone, sweat, and what I can only describe as fear mixed with determination. It is not pleasant, but you get used to it. There were about 40 of us in the hall that day, running through our usual conditioning routines. Well, most of us were. Krexar was not. Krexar never did anything usual. He stood at the center of the sparring circle, all 7 feet and 4 inches of pure Vorthian muscle, scales gleaming under the harsh training lights like polished obsidian. His chest was broad enough to use as a landing pad, and his arms, all 4 of them, were crossed in that way that screamed, "I am about to make someone's day significantly worse." His crest was fully extended too, which for Vorthians is either a mating display or a threat display, and trust me, nobody was in the mood for romance. Krexar had a record at the academy, and not the good kind. 17 students sent to medical bay in 6 months. 0 disciplinary actions, because his family had the kind of political connections that made instructors look the other way. He was a champion back on Vorthia Prime, which apparently gave him the right to treat everyone else like training dummies. And then there was Jenna Reeves, human, female, roughly 5 feet and 6 inches tall, which is laughably small by academy standards. She weighed maybe 130 pounds soaking wet, and had this brown hair she kept tied back in a simple tail. No scales, no exoskeleton, no natural armor plating whatsoever, just soft pink skin that looked like it would tear if you sneezed on it too hard. She had been at the academy for 3 weeks, kept to herself mostly, and had the kind of quiet presence that made you forget she was even in the room, which was precisely why Krexar noticed her. I think bullies have a radar for the quiet ones. "Hey, human," Krexar's voice boomed across the hall, and I swear the temperature dropped 5 degrees. Everyone stopped what they were doing. You could have heard a feather hit the floor, if anyone had feathers. "I have been watching you. You move like a sick Grender cub. Pathetic." Jenna was at the weight station, setting down a bar that, okay fine, was probably lighter than what the rest of us were using. She turned slowly, and her face was blank. Not scared, not angry, just blank, which should have been Krexar's first warning, but he was not exactly known for his observational skills. "I am talking to you, meat sack," he continued, strutting toward her like he owned the place. Which, given his family's influence, he kind of did. 3 weeks here and you have not sparred once. "Afraid you will break?" "Not interested," Jenna said. Her voice was quiet, calm, with this accent that made every word sound clipped and precise. Earth accent, North American region. If my xenolinguistics classes taught me anything. Krexar laughed, and it sounded like rocks grinding together. "Not interested? You do not get to be not interested, human. This is the Combat Academy. You either fight, or you leave. So what will it be?" He was right in front of her now, looming over her like a mountain over a pebble. The size difference was absurd, comical, even. "I would rather not," Jenna said, still in that same calm voice. She took a step back, hands at her sides, non-threatening, submissive, even. And that was when Krexar made his mistake. "Circle. Now," he pointed to the sparring ring with one of his lower arms. "Unless you want everyone here to know that humans are as weak as they look. Which, let us be honest, you are." The crowd had formed now, students from 6 different species, all watching, some with their communication devices out to record. Because nothing says quality education like watching someone get demolished for entertainment, right? Jenna looked at the circle, then back at Krexar, then over to where Instructor Velthos was standing on the observation platform. reviewing something on his datapad. The instructor, a lanky Threscian with too many joints in his arms, had not even looked up yet. "Fine," Jenna said, and walked toward the circle. "And that, my friends, is when I should have known better." Now, before we continue with what is about to become a lesson in cosmic humility, let me give you some context, because context matters when you are about to witness an educational beatdown. Humans had only been accepted into the Galactic Combat Academy for about 2 years. 2 years. That is nothing in galactic terms. The Academy itself has been around for 3 centuries, training the finest warriors, tacticians, and security specialists in known space. Graduates go on to lead planetary defense forces, command fleet security divisions, and protect high-value targets across the galaxy. This place does not just have a reputation, it has the reputation. If you can survive 4 years here, you can write your own ticket anywhere in civilized space. So when the Terran Federation finally got their membership approved and started sending candidates, we were all curious. Sure, but also deeply skeptical. Humans were new to the galactic stage, only made contact 40 years ago, and their physiology was, how do I put this delicately, underwhelming. No natural weapons, no armor, mediocre strength by most species standards, and they came from a world with embarrassingly low gravity. 1.0 g. I have seen cargo moons with higher gravity than Earth, but the Galactic Council has quotas and diversity initiatives. So here we were, sharing training halls with beings who looked like they would snap in a stiff breeze. Krexar, on the other hand, was Academy royalty, if you can call it that. Undefeated in 32 official sparring matches, winner of the Vorthian Tri-Continental Combat Championships for 3 years running before he even enrolled here. His family controlled half the mining operations in the Vorthian system, which meant credits, which meant influence, which meant he could put 17 students in medical bay and face exactly 0 consequences. Oh, the Academy administrators would make concerned noises and file reports, but nothing ever stuck. The Vorthian embassy would make a call, some credits would change hands, and suddenly the incident was just an unfortunate training accident. Most of us had learned to stay out of his way. It was simple survival mathematics. Jenna, though, she was a ghost. In 3 weeks I had heard her speak maybe 10 times, always brief, always polite. She showed up on time, completed every assignment, never complained, never stood out. During combat drills, she practiced forms alone in the corner. During tactical briefings, she took notes quietly. During meals, she ate by herself, reading something on her datapad. The instructors barely seemed to notice her, which I assumed was exactly how she wanted it. Instructor Velphos was typical Academy staff, which is to say he was competent but jaded. 20 years of teaching had given him the emotional range of a scanning computer. He watched everything from his observation platform, made notes, corrected form, and enforced rules when it suited him. The problem was, sparring challenges were technically allowed under Academy protocol, encouraged even, as long as both parties agreed, which Jenna technically had, even if she had been backed into a corner to do it. Around me, students were already pulling out their credit chips. Grexel, a Manthari with too much money and too few brains, was offering 5-to-1 odds on Krexar winning in under 30 seconds. A group of Kaldorians were laughing, taking bets on whether Jenna would cry before or after she got hit. Someone behind me muttered that Medical Bay should prepare a bed now and save time. Nobody, and I mean nobody, was betting on the human. Looking back, we were all idiots. The sparring circle is a simple thing, really. 20 feet in diameter, marked by a glowing blue energy field that keeps fights contained and prevents outside interference. Academy regulation, designed to ensure fair combat, or in this case to ensure we all had front row seats to what everyone assumed would be a massacre. Krexar stepped into the circle first. Naturally, because showmanship was half his personality. He rolled all 4 shoulders, cracked his neck with a sound like snapping timber, and did this little hop-step routine that made the reinforced floor shudder. The guy was built like a biological tank. His scales were dark green with black striping, polished to a sheen that caught the light with every movement. Each of his forearms was thicker than Jenna's entire torso, corded with muscle that rippled under his hide. His tail, easily 6 feet long and tipped with a bony club, swayed behind him like a wrecking ball looking for a building. Then Jenna stepped in, and the contrast was so absurd I almost laughed. Almost. She was wearing standard Academy training gear, gray synthetic fabric that fit loose on her small frame. No armor, because this was supposed to be a light sparring match, though I doubt anyone told Krexar that. Her arms were bare from the elbows down, and I could see they were toned but thin, with visible veins running under that pale skin. Her hands were taped at the knuckles, which seemed optimistic. What was she planning to do? Punch? She would break every bone in her hand before she dented his scales. The crowd had swelled now, easily 60 students forming a semicircle around the ring. The noise level rose, voices chattering in a dozen languages, translation implants working overtime. The energy in the hall shifted from routine boredom to anticipation. Bloodsport has always drawn a crowd, no matter the species. Up on the observation platform, Instructor Velthos finally looked up from his datapad. His 3 eyes narrowed, focused on the circle, and I saw his hand move toward the emergency stop control. But then he hesitated, probably running the same calculation everyone else was, that this was technically legal, technically consensual, and technically not his problem until someone got seriously hurt. He lowered his hand, watching, waiting. Big mistake. Krexar raised all 4 arms, flexing for the crowd, his crest fully extended in threat display. Try not to die too quickly, human. I want to enjoy this. Jenna just stood there, hands loose at her sides, weight evenly distributed on both feet. Her face was still blank, but her eyes were tracking everything. Krexar's stance, his weight distribution, the way his tail moved, where his hands were positioned. She was reading him like a technical manual, calm and clinical. Ready positions, Velthos called out, his voice amplified through the hall speakers. He sounded bored. Krexar dropped into a combat stance, all 4 arms raised, claws extended. Jenna did not move. She just stood there, loose, relaxed, like she was waiting for a transport shuttle. That should have been warning number 2. Begin, Velthos announced, and the galaxy started learning a very painful lesson about humanity. Krexar moved fast. I will give him that. For a being that size, he could really move. He closed the distance in 3 massive strides, all 4 arms coming down in a hammer strike that would have turned Jenna into a very flat, very dead pancake. Except she was not there anymore. Jenna slipped to the side, and I mean slipped, like water flowing around a rock. Minimal movement, maximum efficiency. Krexar's fists, all 4 of them, slammed into the mat where she had been standing a fraction of a second earlier. The impact sent a shockwave through the floor that I felt through my feet. Before Krexar could recover, Jenna moved in. Not away. In, closer to him, inside his reach, which was exactly where you did not want to be when fighting a Vorthian. His arms were his primary weapons, everyone knew that, so you kept distance. You used range. You did not get close. Jenna apparently had not read that manual. Her elbow, and I am talking about her fragile little human elbow, snapped up and caught Krexar right in the gap between his chest plates, just below where his secondary arms connected to his torso. It was a precision strike, targeting a weak point that most people did not even know existed. Krexar made a sound I had never heard a Vorthian make before, something between a cough and a wheeze. He stumbled back half a step, and his eyes went wide with something that looked suspiciously like surprise. The crowd went quiet. Not silent, but that shocked kind of quiet where everyone is trying to process what they just saw and failing. Did she just? Someone behind me started. No way. Someone else finished. Krexar recovered fast, because he was a champion, and champions do not stay surprised for long. But the surprise was there, just for a moment, and it was beautiful. His crest flared even wider, which I did not think was physically possible, and his tail whipped around in a vicious arc aimed at Jenna's head. She ducked under it smooth as silk, and that tail whistled through the air, where her skull had been. If it had connected, it would have separated her head from her shoulders. No question. But it did not connect. Jenna came up inside his guard again, and this time her fist, her tiny taped-up human fist, drove into the nerve cluster on Krexar's lower left arm. I know this because I took xenobiology, and I know that spot is sensitive on Vorthians. What I did not know was that hitting it would make Krexar's entire arm go limp and useless. But apparently Jenna knew. What is happening? Krexar said next to me, and he sounded genuinely confused. The Manthari's betting chip was still in his hand, forgotten. I have no idea, I said, because I really did not. Krexar roared now, actually roared, and the sound echoed through the hall like a shuttle engine. He was angry. No, he was beyond angry. He was furious and embarrassed, which is a dangerous combination in any species but especially in Vorthians. Pride is a big thing in their culture. Losing face is worse than losing blood. He launched a flurry of strikes, 3 functioning arms moving in coordinated patterns that should have overwhelmed anyone. The techniques were textbook Vorthian combat forms, aggressive and powerful, designed to break through defenses through sheer force and speed. Jenna weaved through them like they were moving in slow motion. Head movement, footwork, body positioning, she made it look easy. Every punch missed by inches, every grab caught empty air. She was not faster than him, I realized. She was reading him, predicting where he would strike before he struck, seeing the telegraphs in his movement that the rest of us missed. Up on the platform, Instructor Velthaus stood up from his seat. His hand hovered over the emergency stop again. I could see the conflict on his angular face, the debate happening behind those 3 eyes. This was getting out of hand. Someone should stop this, but he hesitated. Still watching, still waiting for that line to be crossed. Krexar's confusion was shifting now, morphing into something uglier. Rage. Pure, unfiltered rage. His crest was so extended it looked painful and foam was starting to form at the corners of his mouth. "Stop moving and fight me, you coward," he bellowed and charged forward with all his considerable mass behind him. Jenna's expression did not change. Still calm, still clinical, still terrifyingly blank. And that was when I realized something that made my blood run cold. She was not trying yet. This was her being gentle. Krexar stopped playing around. That much was clear when he dropped the formal combat stances and went absolutely feral. No more textbook techniques. No more champion form. Just raw, primal violence from a 7-foot predator who had finally realized he was in an actual fight. He came at Jenna with everything. Claws extended, tail whipping, using his mass as a weapon. A wild haymaker from his upper right arm, followed immediately by a sweeping strike from his lower left, his tail coming around for her legs, while his remaining good arm reached for a grapple. It was chaos, aggressive and overwhelming, the kind of assault that should have ended this immediately. Jenna dropped low, rolled under his grasp and came up behind him. Her leg snapped out in a kick that caught the back of Krexar's knee, and I heard something pop. Not break, but definitely pop. Krexar's leg buckled just for a second, but a second was all she needed. Her palm struck the base of his spine, right where the tail connected. Another nerve cluster. Krexar's tail went limp, dragging on the mat like dead weight. "Ancestors preserve us," someone whispered. "A Threscian student, I think." See, here is the thing about honor codes in traditional combat, which most galactic species have in some form or another. We have rules, protocols. There are proper ways to fight, techniques passed down through generations, forms that demonstrate skill and discipline. Even in brutal combat, there is artistry, there is honor. You demonstrate your superiority through mastery of technique. Humans, apparently, do not care about any of that. Jenna's fighting style was not pretty. It was not elegant. It was practical, efficient, and absolutely brutal. Every movement had a purpose. Every strike targeted a weakness. She was not trying to outfight Krexar or prove she was better. She was systematically dismantling him like a mechanic taking apart a malfunctioning machine. Krexar spun around, favoring his injured leg, and launched a desperate combination. Jenna parried the first strike, redirected the second, and slipped the third. Then her knuckles drove into his throat, right above the chest plates. Not hard enough to crush his windpipe, which she absolutely could have done, but hard enough to make breathing very difficult for him. He staggered back, gasping, and the crowd was not cheering anymore. We were watching in stunned silence as everything we thought we knew about combat got thrown out the nearest airlock. "She is toying with him?" I said out loud, and the Keltorian next to me, a third-year named Prigialal, nodded slowly. "That is not toying," Priginal said. "That is control, complete control." And he was right. Jenna could have ended this already. The throat shot could have been lethal. The spine strike could have paralyzed him. She was choosing not to. She was pulling her strikes, limiting the damage, fighting with restraint that was somehow more terrifying than raw aggression. Up on the platform, Velthaus was moving now, walking quickly toward the control panel. His 3 eyes were fixed on the circle and his mandibles were clicking in what I recognized as Threscian agitation. He had finally seen enough. His hand reached for the emergency but Krexar, bleeding from his mouth now, scales cracked in 3 places, refused to quit. Pride. Stupid. Stubborn. Vorthian pride. He rushed her again, and this time he was sloppy. Injured. Exhausted. Desperate. His attacks had no strategy, no thought. Just a wounded animal trying to hurt the thing that hurt it. Jenna adapted instantly. Where before she had been defensive, now she became aggressive. She stepped into his charge, grabbed his upper right arm with both hands, and used his own momentum against him. A throw, simple but perfectly executed, and suddenly all 7 feet and 4 inches of Krexar was airborne. He hit the mat hard enough to crack the reinforced flooring. The sound echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Rixel dropped his credit chip. It clattered on the floor, forgotten. By the void, someone breathed. Krexar tried to get up. He actually tried. Got his hands under him, pushed, made it halfway to his knees. His crest was still extended, but it was shaking now, trembling with exhaustion or shock or both. Jenna stood over him, still calm, still composed, not even breathing hard. And that was when my brain finally put the pieces together. The precision, the knowledge of anatomy, the systematic targeting of weak points, the controlled aggression, the complete absence of wasted movement. She has military training, I said. Prisano looked at me. What? Military training. Real military training, not academy training. She is not a student. She is a soldier. On the platform, Velforts hit the emergency stop. The energy field around the circle flared bright red, signaling a forced halt. Too late, Instructor. Way too late. The emergency stop signal flared, bathing the circle in red light, but Krexar either did not see it or did not care. Probably did not care. His pride was shattered, his reputation was in ruins, and 60-plus students had just watched a human half his size take him apart like cheap furniture. So he made one final, desperate, catastrophically stupid decision. He grabbed a training blade from the equipment rack at the edge of the circle. The crowd gasped. Collective sharp. The kind of sound you make when you watch someone step off a cliff. Training blades are dulled. Sure, but they are still weapons. Introducing weapons into an unarmed sparring match was not just against regulations, it was grounds for immediate expulsion. Or it would be, if you were not the son of a mining baron with political connections. Krexar, stand down immediately. Velfos's voice boomed through the speakers, but he was still 20 feet away from the circle controls, and the emergency stop was not instantaneous. It needed a manual override, which meant precious seconds. Seconds Krexar used to lunge at Jenna with the blade extended. Here is what I expected to happen. I expected Jenna to retreat, to get out of range, to call for help, to do literally anything a sane person would do when a 7-foot armored alien came at them with a weapon. Here is what actually happened. Jenna moved forward. She closed the distance before Krexar could build momentum, stepped inside the arc of his swing, and caught his wrist with both hands. Her whole body twisted, using leverage and mechanical advantage, and there was this awful wet cracking sound that made my stomach turn. Krexar's wrist snapped. Not broke. Snapped. Bones separated. Ligaments tore. And the blade clattered to the mat. But Jenna was not done. Her knee came up, fast and brutal, into Krexar's midsection. Right into the solar plexus equivalent, where all the nerve clusters bundled together. The air exploded out of his lungs in a horrible wheeze. His legs gave out. He was falling, and Jenna rode him down, controlling his descent with one hand while her other elbow drove into the side of his head. Not the temple. That would have killed him. But right behind the auditory ridge, where the skull was thickest, where the impact would cause maximum disorientation with minimal permanent damage. Krexar hit the mat face first. His crest collapsed flat against his skull. His breathing was ragged, wet, wrong-sounding. Blood pooled under his face, dark green against the gray mat. One of his secondary arms was bent at an angle that made my spine hurt just looking at it. The energy field dropped. The Lilthos vaulted over the railing, moving faster than I had ever seen a Threshian move, his medical emergency beacon already active and screaming. The high-pitched wail filled the hall, calling for immediate medical response. The arena went silent. Not quiet, silent. 60 students, 6 species, all of us capable of making sound, and nobody made a single noise. We just stood there, staring, trying to process what we had just witnessed. Jenna stood over Krexar's unconscious body, chest rising and falling in measured breaths. Her hands were still taped. A little blood on her knuckles. Might have been hers, Might have been his. Her training uniform was barely wrinkled. She looked down at Krexar with an expression that I can only describe as disappointed. Not satisfied, not triumphant, disappointed. Like this whole thing had been a waste of her time. Step back, now. Velthos ordered as he reached the circle, his voice tight with controlled panic. Medical drones were already descending from the ceiling, scanners active, trauma supplies deployed. Jenna stepped back. 2 precise steps. Hands at her sides. Waiting. I told him I would rather not, she said. Her voice was quiet, calm, exactly the same tone as before, like she had just declined an invitation to lunch, not put the Academy's starfighter in critical condition. The medical team swarmed Krexar. Stabilization fields activated. Biomonitors beeped urgent warnings. Someone was shouting about internal bleeding and fractured skeletal plates. Velthos turned to Jenna, his 3 eyes wide, his mandibles clicking rapid fire. You do not move. Do not say anything. Security is on the way. Jenna nodded once. Compliant. Cooperative. I looked around at my fellow students. Grexel's mouth was hanging open. Prenol's scales had gone pale. The Kaldorian in the back was actively shaking. And me? I could not stop staring at Jenna's hands. Still taped, still ready, like she had been prepared for this exact situation all along, like she had known exactly what would happen when Krexar pushed her into that circle. And I realized with cold certainty settling in my gut that she had tried to warn him. She really had rather not. The medical team had Krexar on a hover stretcher within 90 seconds, which is impressive response time even by Academy standards. His vital signs were stable but concerning. 3 cracked ribs, fractured wrist, severe concussion, dislocated shoulder, and enough soft tissue damage to keep him in regeneration therapy for at least a week. Maybe 2. He would live. He would recover. But his undefeated record was now very, very defeated. Security arrived next, 2 hulking Bronthor guards in full tactical gear, which seemed excessive until I remembered they had no idea what they were walking into. For all they knew, there was an active threat situation. When they saw Jenna, all 5 feet 6 inches of her standing calmly with her hands visible, I swear one of them looked confused. This is the individual? The lead guard asked Velthos, his voice a deep rumble that vibrated through the floor. Yes, Velthos said, and he sounded tired. So very tired. The guard looked Jenna up and down, then looked at the blood on the mat, then back at Jenna. Understood. Miss, you will need to come with us for questioning. Of course, Jenna said. Polite. Cooperative. Like she was being asked to fill out paperwork, not being detained after hospitalizing a fellow student. Wait. Velthos held up one long-fingered hand. He turned to Jenna and his voice dropped low, meant only for her. But we were all close enough to hear. Before you go, explain. You have been here 3 weeks. No sparring, no combat drills, nothing. Then this. How? Jenna was quiet for a moment, and for the first time, I saw something other than blank composure on her face. Resignation, maybe, or acceptance. I tried to avoid this, she said. I told him I would rather not. I meant it. That does not answer my question. Terran Federation Marines, Jenna said simply. 8 years, 3 combat deployments, close quarters combat instructor for the last 2. I came to the Academy because I wanted to learn command and tactics, not because I needed combat training. I already have that. The silence that followed was deafening. Velthos' mandibles stopped clicking. He just stared at her. You are military, he said finally. Was military. Honorably discharged 6 months ago. All of this is in my application file. Your file says you have prior self-defense training. That is technically accurate, Jenna said, and I swear I detected the faintest hint of sarcasm. Marines do learn self-defense. Among other things, I felt my world tilt slightly. We had all seen the human application files when they first arrived. Brief summaries, academic records, basic biographical data. Prior self-defense training could mean anything from a weekend course to professional instruction. We had assumed weekend course, because why would we assume anything else? We had assumed humans were soft, weak, new to the galactic stage and therefore inexperienced. We had assumed wrong. Around me, students were having similar realizations. Prenal was pulling up something on his data pad, reading fast, his scales shifting colors in distress. Grexel was just standing there, looking at his forgotten credit chip on the floor like it held the answers to the universe. The Academy administration will need to review this incident, Ilthos said, pulling himself together with visible effort. There will be questions. Many questions. I understand, Jenna said. For what it is worth, Velthos added quietly, he should not have grabbed that blade. That was his choice, not yours. Jenna nodded, but said nothing. The security guards escorted her out of the hall, and we all watched her go. She walked with perfect posture, head up, shoulders back. Military bearing. How had we not noticed that before? After she left, the hall remained silent for another full minute. Then, slowly, conversation started. Hushed at first, then growing louder, more animated. Data pads came out. Files were accessed. Suddenly everyone wanted to know more about humans, about Earth, about their military history. What we found was not comforting. Humans had been fighting wars for their entire recorded history. Thousands of years of continuous conflict, adaptation and innovation in the art of killing each other. They had developed hundreds of different martial arts systems. Their military training programs were considered extreme even by their own standards. And we had thought they were soft. Velthos stood alone in the circle, looking at the blood on the mat, and I heard him mutter something in his native language. My translator did not catch it, but I am pretty sure it was a curse. The Academy's official response came 3 hours later. After a full investigation, it was determined that Jenna had acted in self-defense after Krexar introduced a weapon into an unarmed match. No disciplinary action. Case closed. Krexar's family tried to push back, of course, but even their political connections could not overcome the security footage, which showed very clearly who escalated and who responded. For the first time in his academy career, Krexar faced consequences. Suspended for 1 month, mandatory anger management counseling, probationary status, and the entire student body learned a very important lesson about making assumptions. So here we are, 2 months later, and I am still thinking about that day in Training Hall 7. Funny how one fight can change your entire perspective on reality. I see Jenna around campus regularly now. She still keeps to herself mostly, still eats alone, still takes notes quietly during tactical briefings. The difference is that nobody bothers her anymore. Not even a little. Students give her space, not out of fear exactly, but out of respect. The kind of respect you give to someone who has proven they are exactly as dangerous as they need to be and not one bit more. She nods at me sometimes when we pass in the corridors. I nod back. We have never actually spoken, but there is an understanding there. I was one of the idiots who underestimated her, and she knows it, and somehow that is okay. Krexar returned to classes after his suspension, quieter now, humbler. He actually apologized to 3 of the students he had previously hospitalized, which shocked everyone who heard about it. He still trains hard, still competes, but the arrogance is gone, replaced by something that looks suspiciously like wisdom. Getting dismantled by someone half your size will do that, I suppose. Teaches you that strength is not just about muscle and scales. The academy has changed too. Subtly, but noticeably. Instructors pay more attention to the human students now. Not with suspicion, but with genuine curiosity. What else have we missed? What other assumptions have we made? Combat curriculum has been updated to include human martial arts as an elective. It is popular. Turns out a lot of species are interested in learning how to fight efficiently without relying on natural advantages. The galaxy, it seems, has a learning curve when it comes to humanity. We assume that because they lack claws, scales, natural armor and come from a low-gravity world, they would be weak. We forgot to consider that maybe, just maybe, a species that had to survive without those advantages might have developed other skills, better skills. Humans are persistence hunters. We know this now. They evolved chasing prey across vast distances until it collapsed from exhaustion. They are endurance specialists who learn to use tools, tactics, and intelligence to overcome physically superior opponents. Because on Earth everything was a physically superior opponent, and they got very, very good at winning anyway. I watch Jenna sometimes during sparring drills. She has started participating now, working with students who ask nicely and approach respectfully. She is a good teacher, patient and precise. She pulls her strikes, controls the engagement, makes sure everyone learns without getting hurt, just like she tried to do with Krexar before he made his choice. The human delegation to the academy has grown. 15 new students arrived last month. More are expected next semester, the Galactic Council fast-tracked several applications, apparently deciding that having humans in the academy was suddenly a very good idea. Funny how quickly politics shift when reality slaps you in the face. I graduated last week. Top 15% of my class, which I am proud of. I have accepted a position with a multi-species security firm operating in the neutral zones. Good pay, decent benefits, exciting work. During my exit interview, the career counselor asked if I had any advice for incoming students. I thought about it for a moment and smiled. Yeah, I said, do not pick fights with humans, and if one of them says they would rather not, believe them. The counselor looked confused, so I told her the story. She listened, eyes widening, mandibles clicking faster and faster. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and was quiet for a long moment. The galaxy is going to have to adjust, she said finally. I nodded. The galaxy is going to have to adjust, because humans are here now. They are in our academies, our militaries, our institutions. They are small, soft, physically unimpressive by most measures. They also have thousands of years of experience in asymmetric warfare, tactical adaptation, and finding creative ways to kill things that should absolutely be able to kill them first. We thought we were doing them a favor, letting them into our prestigious academy, sharing our advanced knowledge and superior training. Turns out, they were doing us a favor by showing restraint. Jenna Reeves tried to avoid that fight. She really did. She gave Krexar every opportunity to walk away. And when he would not, when he pushed and finally crossed the line, she taught the entire academy a lesson we desperately needed to learn. Never underestimate humanity. Because on a planet where everything wanted to eat them, crush them, poison them, or tear them apart, they became the apex predator anyway. Not through strength, through stubbornness, intelligence, and a terrifying willingness to do whatever it takes to survive. Welcome to the galactic community, humans. We are very glad you are on our side. Most of us, anyway.